I got a text earlier today from Sierra. Hey girl, about oils and frying things and what that means for nutritional value. And I thought that that would make a really great video. So let's dive into it. My name is Lauren and I am getting my PhD in nutritional sciences, and I make lots of random videos and also videos about nutrition science, and this is one of them. I think oils in the past few months, especially since the Maha people have come into power, have gotten an interesting story being told about them. I also think that there's a lot of general feelings and media and thoughts around fried food and what that means for us. And I think that that story can all come together neatly to make it very clear. Some more knowledge about oils and fried things. So this is from Baylor College of Medicine, as you can see here. A dietitian wrote this piece, and it's called "The Truth About Fried Food." I wanted to reference this because I think it's important to put everything I'm saying in relation to science and in relation to experts, and dietitian is the best person that you can go to for questions about this. I will be referencing this piece when discussing. But first, I do just want to say that in general, fried food is a part of American culture. It's a part of a lot of different cultures, cuisines. My own culture, Black culture, of course, has a lot of fried foods. As we know, fried chicken originated from Black Southern culture, and more specifically, those that were enslaved and descendants of enslaved. And that is because when they were given the cheaper parts of the chicken, so to speak, or the parts with less meat, one of the main ways they can make that taste really good is through frying it, adding a lot of seasonings, and going about their day. So I would just like to state that before getting into any thoughts about fried foods, because I do think that there's a lot of cultural nuances that is needed when discussing this topic, in addition to discussing how it affects our health, because I think sometimes it can really fall down on different cultures when we talk about fried food in a way that is demeaning when it doesn't have to be. I think that there is a clear place for science, and there's also a clear place for nuance, and there's also a clear place to still enjoy fried foods. And the article that I just showed talks about it a little bit, so let's dive in. What I liked about this is that it was also broken down into different forms of frying. So I just wanted to start with deep frying, because just frying something in a pan versus deep frying something is very different. I think what's important to reference here in terms of a scientific perspective is also the heat points at which we cook food can also cause different reactions in the food. I mean, cooking food is still a chemical process. I mean, it's hard to describe it as that, I guess, in general, because we don't think of it that way, but there are a lot of things happening when we are turning a raw food into a non-raw food. But you can pause to read this, or maybe you already have. What is going on when we are deep frying something at a very high temperature can end up causing, as it says here, glycation in products. So that is what's going to cause all the bad stuff in fried food, so inflammation. The reason that we don't like fried foods is because when you have it excessively, it can lead to inflammation in your body, which can lead to chronic disease. I've made some other videos about that. Feel free to check out my page for more. I think when we discuss this too, we want to make sure that we are, if you are going to fry foods, there's different oils you can use. Of course, for example, Chick-fil-A is very famous for using peanut oil. As you can see here, those are the considered heart-healthy oils, so peanut, sunflower, and safflower oil. And those are also because those oils are fine at a higher temp. Not every single oil can be at high temperatures. And sometimes when we use an oil that isn't good for high temperatures, it can cause other chemical reactions in our food. For example, like the Maillard reaction, that can lead to other bad effects that are inflammatory or can be considered cancer causing. The next one they mention is pan frying. So I like this breakdown once again because it's telling you where to use which oil. So olive oil, canola oil, and avocado are good for the pan. Not going to be great if you're deep frying something, right? And that's because, once again, certain oils do better at certain temperatures. Pan frying, as it states here, can require a lower temp. And I think that's something to consider when we're thinking about oils and how we are frying food. People consider these a healthier alternative to the other oils, especially avocado oil, because it is a vegetable oil, or technically avocado is a fruit, but you know what I mean. Same thing with olive oil. That Both of those have been shown to have positive effects for the body. However, once again, any time that you are burning an oil and you are ingesting that can cause inflammation. So even if you didn't have something fried and breaded, that can cause problem. And then we go on to the new version of frying, which is the air fry, which this article is saying is one of the healthiest forms of frying, definitely because there's very little oil use, which is important when we are considering things like the nutrition value of the foods we're eating. Like I just said, olive oil and avocado oil and canola oil all have different health effects that are beneficial. However, when that oil is burned or it's at a very, very high temp, that's when the inflammatory compounds can come through and cause issue. So when you air fry, that's a lot less likely. Or if you, as it says here, grilled and broiled, also a lot less likely. I did also want to state that one of the things that article mentions, I didn't take a screenshot of it though, is that it also, maybe at the beginning it did, I forgot. The type of breading that you use for your fried foods can also lead to different ways that the oil is absorbed. For example, one of the things that was mentioned is if you're using like an all-purpose flour, that's going to absorb oil very differently and also could lead to a higher caloric density versus a gluten-free alternative flour, maybe like a corn flour or rice flour, which is going to absorb the oils a lot differently than just regular all-purpose wheat flour, for example. Another thing to note when we're talking about fried foods and healthiness with fried foods is that a lot of what is causing issue in the fried foods is not just the breading. It's not just like the meat. It's usually the salt. Sodium is usually quite high in fried foods, and that's what causes people issue, especially in terms of heart disease, in terms of blood pressure. And when you eat that consistently over a long period of time, that is what's going to cause you chronic disease, especially in older age, because eating that stuff at an early age doesn't always get people immediately. It's usually what's happening when it's built up over time. And to end, I would just like to say, food does not have moral value. There is no such thing as good or bad food. There is food that is maybe higher in nutrient density than others. There are ways that you can cook things in which you would reduce the amount of inflammatory compounds you would eat. But ultimately, what does happen when we put moral value with food is that it makes people feel bad, and it also makes people maybe more ashamed or talking badly on their cultural foods. As a Black American, fried food is still very much a part of my culture. It's always going to be a part of my culture. I'm very proud of the innovations of people that have come before me to make food taste good. And in fact, the rest of the world has capitalized on that, as many things that Black Americans have done, because fried chicken is widespread. There are KFCs in like every single country. And if not that, there's a Popeyes. Okay, so it is very clear that people enjoy it regardless of where they come from. And that is an innovation that came from Black people in the South and enslaved Black people in the South at that. So I just want to say that. But I would also like to state that choosing to call those foods bad and only those foods bad, and like calling soul food bad, is not the mindset that any of us should have, because like I just said, it's so rich in culture. There are just other alternatives to assist your health that we can use if needed. And it also doesn't mean if you are going home for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever and you decide to eat fried chicken, it's not the end of the world. Like I'm sure maybe a dietitian will get me for that. You can, but I do deeply feel it is important to do a yes and mindset when it comes to food and health. Like, yes, we can incorporate more fruits and vegetables and also not talk poorly on the foods that we grew up on. You know, like, yes, I still like fried chicken, and when I'm making it at home, maybe I'm substituting out the flour. Maybe I'm changing the amount of salt. There are just ways to get around it. And that's why I love Sierra's page, because she talks a lot about that. So please go follow her and check it out. And just remember that different oils, different temps. Use the temps that work for what you're doing. And you can reference that article if you need. I hope you have a great day. Bye.